Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming and more Wilds talk. With title update 2 right around the corner, there's something pretty important coming with that I want to discuss today. The bigger weapon changes. Here's what we know about that thanks to the second director's letter. In version 1.011, the hammer, hunting horn, gunlance, light bowgun, and heavy bowgun all had various adjustments made. Also, certain aspects for Gunlance artian weapons have been increased too. While some weapons had certain parameters adjusted downwards and other parameters had been adjusted upwards, viewed in totality, you'd find all weapon types have had their possibilities expanded. So they were encouraging us to try them. This was in the May update where it was a lot more than we were expecting. We thought the hammer would get most of the changes and maybe you'd see some for other weapons like maybe hunting horn at best. The fact that many weapons were changed in more interesting ways than expected was a good thing. So it was obviously good, but in my opinion, the May update didn't really reinvigorate the player base like a title update would. So I hope that people come back with title update 2 and see that there's been some positive changes with monsters and the weapons that they didn't actually experience. But what about title update 2 and the weapon changes coming? Well, it goes on to say, also, the hammer is planned to receive various improvements in title update 2 in addition to the adjustments that were made in the May update. This includes the addition of offset effects for certain attacks and the addition of a follow-up attack upon a successful offset. Other weapons will also receive changes in title update 2, such as one of my main weapons, dual blades. So let's talk about what we're expecting and what we're hoping. Starting with the hammer. To start with the May update and the response to that, obviously the damage is noticeably better. Things like the focus strikes are actually more reliable, not only to land, which is great, but it's not as punishing if you miss the wound and you're not so stuck in an animation as long. Also, being able to exit the offset sort of hold with a roll is something that's certainly good to have, but it's definitely one of those things where you're like, why wasn't it always that way? So overall, it's definitely become more fluid and reliable, and the output is certainly obviously better. But a lot of people still feel a lot of issues with the moveset and how it still needs that uplift that we were kind of expecting it was going to get in this May update. Only for it to turn out that that's coming in title update 2. So what is it we're actually going to get? Well, as I just said, they're doing two things for certain. It's going to be the first weapon that has proper different offset options. Like, yeah, insect glaive has two ways to use its offset, but it's the same attack, right? They said includes the addition of offset effects for certain attacks. So it may even be multiple attacks are going to get a new offset effect, leaving it with maybe 3 different offset options. Now, people are speculating on what attack or attacks those are going to be. There's talks about the charged uppercut or actually mighty charge itself, which, to be fair, you think about spinning that around and doing the big slam and that being an offset. That'd be incredibly satisfying. The other part that we definitely know about, though, is the addition of a follow-up attack upon a successful offset. It's always been a complaint within the hammer community for Wilds that you land an offset and then there's no proper gap closer or special thing that happens, whereas that's the case for most weapons. So why does hammer not have one? I don't know, but it's gonna get one. What's that going to be? Well, there's hopes that it could be the many flip slams that you do from a slide aerial. Or say in Rise, you had a charged version of this where you'd pull on a wire bug and spring yourself forward with as many front flip slams. If it's something silly and fun like that, I think it'd be great. But yeah, they've buffed the damage numbers, they've made some slight improvements, but I think the moveset definitely needs some bigger facelifts, something more unique. Compared to Rise, I do think it feels quite simple and humble, and I do like, the grounded hammer nature, but it's definitely a bit too much right now. There was a really cool concept I saw on Reddit, so I'd like to credit the person that made that post, Sombrero Guy. Talking about what if there was a new power state that you unlocked after landing an offset? One that gave you an improved moveset, whether that's faster attacks, better motion values, or access to, different offsets. It'd be a state that you'd exit by using a weapon sheath, or maybe whenever you use Mighty Charge as a stronger version. Just a cool idea that I'd like to highlight as just an example of how they could drastically change an aspect of the weapon, to change the fact that it's a pretty straightforward moveset right now. We'll see what they do, but what is it you guys would like to see for hammer? But now let's talk about dual blades, which is one that I'm surprised to be highlighted in the way that it is. It's one of my main weapons. I didn't really think that it's like a bottom performer, and mechanically, I really like this version in Wilds. It's commonly thought to be one of the most varied and fun version in quite some time. From the control and the movement, the management of your combos, swapping between demon mode and archdemon mode, the management of your demon gauge and the stamina because of that, I think it's all very good, especially the new demon dodge, which has been a fantastic way to address the removal of the rise counter, but give us something new and interesting with the boost that you get from it, a damage bonus and the new movement unlocked through it. If I had to ask myself, what would I want for dual blades if they were going to buff it? Well, I guess it would be the lacking output compared to the other weapons, but again, I think that largely ties to the element issues of Wilds in general. You know, a weapon that generally leans into element, and element being quite bad, just kind of makes the weapon feel bad in terms of damage. I guess a general buff to different motion values for raw wouldn't be a bad thing, and I'm not sure they're going to massively address element in Title Update 2. But if they did, you know, improving the hit zones for element output across the board for most of the tier 2 and tier 3 monsters, the new monsters that are added having specifically good element hit zones, this would all go a very long way, not just for dual blades, but any weapon that does well with element. But that feels like quite a big change, and I'm not sure it's going to happen in Title Update 2 because they haven't really mentioned it. So if they're not going to do it that way, what are they going to do? What could I ask for dual blades? Well, I think the Focus Strike spin could deal more damage, or actually what I prefer is if you could control it better. The thing that you'll see with dual blade speedrunners and when you're going for your best runs is that you don't really do the Focus Strike turning tide spin down the spine at all. The problem is that it often leaves you in the wrong place and it's not amazing DPS in itself, so you avoid its use. Maybe we could choose to turn back mid-spin. So you start at the head, then you can turn around mid-spin to land at the head again, making it more worth. Something that could encourage its use better would be actually the demon dodge buff. If you triggered that demon dodge buff by breaking a wound with the Focus Strike, comparable to Charge Blade getting Power Axe mode when they Focus Strike a wound, that could be an interesting twist. Other suggestions I found interesting were about the general movement of the weapon. I thought the movement of this weapon, thanks to the demon boost mode and the evasive attacking at the same time you get from that, was incredible. But if we're thinking of buffing the weapon in any way to lean into its uniqueness, and yet movement speed is important. You want to be a never-ending stream of attacks, you want to move too quick for the monster to ever attack you. Improved movement would further encourage that. One final aspect of dual blades that I could at least think of them buffing, and it makes sense, would be the general building and spending of the demon gauge. Maybe you just spend less in general when using things like the blade dance or the demon flurry combos, compared to them buffing building through the usual methods, which feels fine. You do heavily spend though, so some sort of help with the management of demon gauge could be a way for them to buff it, so we'll see. But for Title Update 2, we can fully expect more changes with other weapons as they've hinted at. And based on the May changes, maybe we could expect more upward updates of minor details around underperforming weapons. But also, maybe even downscaling for parts of weapons that are doing a bit too much with one single attack. In exchange, these weapons have always had upwards improvements of other parts of the kit to encourage the variety, so it's not like a nerf to the weapon but more a rebalancing. It's a good approach. What weapons should be looked at with this in mind? Well, there's two that leap to the front of my head, and that, firstly, is Insect Glaive, which is no doubt the top performing weapon of Wilds and has been since launch. Do I think that's a bad thing? Absolutely not. Every weapon deserves its sort of time in the sun, and people seem to be very happy with that, other than still the clunkiness of the keybinds and everything. I'm sure they've been looking at this weapon this whole time, knowing it's overperforming in relation to other weapons, but it's also one of the weapons that got the most changes from the beta, and those changes were their huge success, adding an offset, proper aerial gameplay benefits, the return of the vaulting dance as well. Maybe this is why it's survived in this super strong state, because they don't want to nerf something they just buffed and was received so well. But if you're going to poke at any one thing for Insect Glaive, I would say that it's the spiral spin attack that dumps all your essence and ultimately is incredibly strong. It kind of has an issue where you're kind of just essence dumping over and over and over and refreshing with the focus wound pop, maybe mid-air. This feels amazing, it looks amazing. If you can land an offset during this, it's great. The way that it encourages aerial play as well, because you can charge this in the air and then slam down for a cool effect, is cool. but it definitely is the center point of the playstyle of the weapon at this point, maybe to an egregious amount. Insect glaive is one of those weapons that has insane movement and positioning. That means you can keep up with a monster in ways that no other weapon really can, while maintaining your DPS uptime even while you're in the air. Kind of like dual blades, but in the air. But because it's all about spamming those spiral releases, it does kind of hit into that. So if you were going to nerf that essence dump attack, they definitely need to buff kind of every other aspect of the kit, in my opinion, to compete. We'll see if they touch it though. The most egregious weapon for this though, in my opinion, is actually the switch axe, which isn't a top performer really. It's somewhere in the middle of the pack because you're spamming full release. And if you're not doing that, you're nowhere near the middle of the pack in terms of output. While it's true that the new counters and offsets, the sword counter feeling amazing and being a great way to generate your amp state and so on, or the offset feeling amazing, looking amazing, and having 2 responses to it, whether you do the axe slam for a power axe, or more likely go into sword mode and get into the next full release. These feel great, but there's other parts of the kit that's just so underloved right now where full release is overloved. So there's loads of ways you could address this. A return of the morph combo being great DPS. You know, when you morph into your sword mode for an attack or morph into an axe for a special attack. In specific, actually, I think they should buff the morph into axe attacks to reward and encourage that part of the weapon so that we use the axe mode for more than just spiral burst and that's it. In regards to full release and how they could change that, maybe they could force some sort of cooldown in it, you know, but keep it sort strong and satisfying, but at the same time, manage it so the rest of the kit's worth using. One way you could do that is maybe only be able to use full release slash when you've got full switch gauge, so you can only do it once every now and then. In that case, it'd be really important that full release is super strong though, even stronger than its current version. But like I'm saying, if you're going to tinker with full release, they have to buff the rest of the kit. So your regular sword mode attacks, they need more output. If you're going to drop off from full release, zero sum discharge might get some love. In this current state, it's definitely not worth the time. Pretty much you only want to do the attach to avoid attacks and deal damage at the same time. Something to make it more worth could be doing something interesting with the follow-up after you do it. We have this flip slam after an offset to gap close and do something interesting. Why doesn't zero sum get that? Oh, and lastly, rapid morph, which is weirdly underloved in Wilds as such an important skill for the weapon normally. It should be a major speed up for all your morph attacks to make them a lot more worth doing. And if they're going to buff morph attacks, you definitely want to buff rapid morph as a skill. So yeah, there's a lot they could do to this weapon to balance it around not just being full release spam again. The last weapon I want to mention just in passing here is the lance. It is one of the weapons that saw big changes from the beta and they were good changes. I think the moveset is cool, but it still remains a underperforming weapon just output wise. I could see some small motion value improvements in this patch just to give it a little push while it's not currently a main focus. For now, that brings me to the end of this little talk. I think it's interesting that in Wilds we have so much balance and patches going on at the moment, that they're actually talking about it and making active changes throughout not just title updates, you know, but even between them with that May update. It's definitely a change to what we're used to and one I'm happy to see. And if they end up with a bunch of weapons feeling better and better compared to the start of Wilds, it's not a bad thing either. And it's a lot better than waiting until an expansion to see any relevant changes, that's for sure. But either way, let me know what you guys think about all this. Is there any other weapons we should have mentioned and what you might want for that? But until next time, I've been Hollow, you've been you, and thanks for watching.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.